ladies and gents, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of History Comes Alive. In today's History Comes Alive episode, ladies and gents, we are going to be looking at imperialism in India. All right, ladies and gents, imperialism in India, primarily British imperialism in India. And we are going to separate this video into three distinct sections, ladies and gents. We are going to be talking about the background information and geography tied into the age of new imperialism in India in our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gents, we are going to be looking at a cause and effect relationship that was established between the British and the native Indians. And then in our third and final segment, we are going to be looking at the Sepoy Mutiny. So make sure you guys are paying close attention to this because it all relates back into imperialism, which is the taking over of one country by another for political or economic gain. Keep that in mind. There's a lot of great stuff upcoming in this video, so make sure you guys are paying close attention, taking copious notes. See you soon. What's up, guys? How's it going? Mr. Arnold, come back for this first segment. We are going to be talking about two things. The first being this, background information, and the second being geography, okay? Tying into the British imperialistic rule in India. Yes, right here, India. But first, before we get started with the background information, let's actually get started with the geography. India is a subcontinent located in Asia. It is noted for having many diverse geographic features, such as rivers like the Indus and Ganges, as well as mountain ranges like the Himalayan mountains and the Hindu Kush. But the key thing I want you guys to keep in mind as far as imperialistic motives or imperialism's sake is this, that India is centrally located to establish a global trade network for the British Empire. As I pointed out, it is in Asia, but it's also a peninsula, and it's also very close to other markets that would be extremely important for the British to acquire. For instance, you can reach India through the Suez Canal, from Europe through the Suez Canal into India, as well as it can go across through ship from Africa. From India, you can trade with Australia, which was also a part of the British Empire, as well as into China. And this will help the British take over of different spheres of influence in China. But the key idea I want you guys to remember is the global trade network that is established. There's many raw materials and resources. This is one of the motives that they get behind that is going to help fuel the fire, the British fire, to taking over India and establishing it as a colony, which is basically when one country or area falls under control from another country. Typically it was a distant country taking over. So we have colony as a definition. We've talked about raw materials and how this helps into becoming a global trade network. One other thing that I'd like to point out is that India is very large, not only in just land, but in terms of population. There's a large population, and this is another motive for the Europeans to colonize them. With the large population, we see a lot of people that will work for cheap money. All right, so the cheap labor workforce will be established in India, and this will help the British kind of gain control and gain an advantage over the native Indians. One other lasting effect that you could put in that box, if you're taking notes, is this, that it's going to also be a time where we see the British bringing Western ideas to India. They saw the native Indians as being inferior peoples strictly based on their own beliefs and teachings, the Europeans' beliefs. So in a way, again, it was another form of ethnocentrism. Was it necessarily fair? No, it was not, but it was deemed justified back then. It was seen as justifiable back then. Now, it's not all bad though. The British will be noted for bringing things like education and hospitals to India, and therefore making it more of a modern power like we see it as today. All right, guys, that's all I have for this first segment dealing with the background information and geography. I hope you guys are still watching. There's more to come in the second segment. See you soon. Alright guys, Mr. Arnold coming in for the second segment. In the second segment, we are going to be talking about some causes and effects that are tied into British imperialism in India. Alright, so make sure you're paying attention here. Before we really dive in here, I want you guys to remember that India, again, is extremely important to the British Empire. They refer to India as the jewel in the crown, basically determining it as the most important colony in the extensive and the massive British Empire at this time. They see it as the jewel in the crown. Just how some of you might think there's a sibling, or it could even be you, seen as the jewel in the crown of your parents' eyes, okay? The British saw India as the jewel in the crown in terms of their colonial empire, something to keep in mind. Now, before we see the British government intervene here in India, we're going to actually see a company, that's right, a business, take hold here and run things. That being the British East India Company, which was chartered by the British government. All right, so we see an economic motive towards getting behind India and taking control. All right, they wanted their raw materials such as cotton, spices, tea, and opium, which we'll see later on with the Imperialism in China video. But what they're going to do is they're going to take that with them, and it's going to later be exported into a manufactured good in a developed country. But before we see that, they need to get into India in the first place, and they see a way they can do it by dividing and ruling, or dividing and conquering India. See, at this time in India, ladies and gents, we see two religious groups going head to head. Instead of unifying and joining together to give the boot to the British, they are going to instead go head to head with each other, and it's going to let the British just walk right into India and later control it, the British East India Company. Now, during this time, ladies and gents, that is extremely important to understand that India, ladies and gents, was not necessarily unified. They didn't see themselves as a nationalistic power like we saw with Germany or England or Italy. They did not necessarily unify in hopes to see themselves as Indian. In a way, ladies and gents, we are going to see India let the British take advantage of them and control their markets and control their cultures and ultimately change everything that's associated to their way of life, their culture, okay? And that's the effect, that through dividing and conquering, they were able to control everything in terms of economic, social, and political stances, or basically arenas in that term and that terminology of life. Alright, that's all I have for this second segment, dealing with the causes and effects of British imperialism in India. We're going to move on to our last segment, dealing with the Sepoy Mutiny. I'll see you there. What's up, guys? Mr. Arnold flying into this last segment. In this last segment, we're going to be talking about the Sepoy Mutiny or Sepoy Rebellion, ladies and gents. The Sepoy Mutiny and Rebellion was a rebellion led by Sepoys, who were Indian soldiers who fought for the British East India Company. Yes, you heard that correctly. All right, they were Indians who were going to fight for the behalf of the British East India Company, ladies and gents, and they are going to get upset due to British ignorance. Now, the British are not going to take into account the religious pride that these people, these sepoys who work for them, have, such as understanding the basic traditions and beliefs of the Hindus and Muslims. A way that they're going to tick these people off, make them mad, make them real mad, is going to be when we see them beginning to bring about rifle cartridges that was rumored to be greased not only with beef fat but also pig fat, ladies and gents. The beef is going to go against the Hindus' basic belief of the cow being sacred. It's going to go against that belief, and the pig is going to go against the Muslims' belief of the pig being unclean. So they do not like putting their mouths around this cartridge to open it up and empty into their new rifles, the Enfield rifles. As a result of this, ladies and gents, the sepoys will have a mutiny. That means to go against their senior officers within the British East India Company, and we will see problems and conflict exist. Boom! That's what's going to happen, okay? So there's going to be a rebellion. The person that's going to really be the spirit, the voice, the freedom fighter here is Mangal Pandey, ladies and gents, and he's going to try and leave India and get rid and kick out the British from India. As a result, though, it is not successful. The Indians, the sepoys, are unsuccessful, and what's going to happen is the British are going to tighten their grip even more on India. Before, it was the British East India Company controlling India. Now, the British government is now going to come in full force. I want you guys to think about, if you got in trouble recently, you might be grounded. Your parents might take away privileges. The same can be said for the British and the Indians' relationship here. The British are going to come in and establish a government in which the Indians will call it as a Raj, a period of British rule, which will last from 1858 up until 1947, when the Indians finally claimed their independence from their colonizers, the British themselves, okay? But the key idea is this. The Sepoy Mutiny was the first major Indian national independence movement. It was not successful, but it will help them continue to eventually see themselves as Indians and not let the divide and conquer of their religious differences essentially separate them. They will eventually join together as Indians, and even though there is a lot of conflict in between those years of the British Raj, they will one day be able to claim themselves as independent and establish the country of India, the sovereign country of India today. Alright, so that's all I have for this video dealing with imperialism in India, British imperialism in India. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure to click the like button, or if you want to leave me a comment, please feel free to do so. Please subscribe, and for this episode of History Comes Alive, I'll see you guys later. Take care. See you soon.